Taeho pressed his face against the cold window of his small dorm room and stared out at the stars. The space station called Stellar Wisdom floated in the dark like a giant metal flower. Hundreds of lights blinked on its surface. Ships came and went like tiny bugs around a lamp. He had been living here for 6 months now. 6 months of studying with aliens from across the galaxy. 6 months of feeling like the dumbest student in every class. Tomorrow was the big day, the final project. Every student had to do something called Galactic Show and Tell. They had to bring something special from their home world, something that showed how smart and amazing their species was. Taeho looked at his desk. Papers were scattered everywhere. Books lay open. His computer screen showed a list of ideas that he had crossed out one by one. What could humans show that would impress anyone here? A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," he said. Sujin walked into the room. She was the human cultural attaché for the station. Her job was to help human students like Taeho fit in. She was older, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a worried smile. "How are you doing, Taeho?" she asked. She sat down on his bed and looked around at the messy room. "Terrible," he said. "I have no idea what to present tomorrow." "Everyone else has such amazing things." Sujin nodded. She had heard this worry from other human students before. "Tell me what the other students are bringing." Taeho picked up his notes. Wubin is bringing something called crystal memory cores. His people can store the memories of their whole planet in tiny crystals. They never forget anything. "That does sound impressive," Sujin said. "Mirai has quantum art that exists in multiple dimensions at once. You can see it from different worlds at the same time. And Jae-sung created living tools that think for themselves. They help solve problems and fix things." Taeho threw his notes down. "What do humans have? We can't even travel faster than light without help from other species. We still use paper books. We get sick from tiny germs." Sujin was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What about human music? Or our stories?" "Everyone has music and stories," Taeho said. "The Scalari have mathematical songs that can solve equations. The Voidborn tell stories that actually happen in other dimensions. Our stuff is just normal." Outside the window, a ship was docking at the station. It was long and silver with strange markings on its side. More students arriving for tomorrow's presentations, probably. "What about human art?" Sujin asked. "Mirai's people paint with light itself. They make pictures that move and change and sing." "What are we supposed to show them? Cave paintings?" Sujin stood up and walked to the window. She watched the ship dock and said, "You know, when I first came to this station, I felt the same way. I thought humans had nothing special to offer." "What changed your mind?" Taeho asked. "I watched how the other species acted around humans. They were curious about us in a way they weren't curious about each other." Taeho joined her at the window. "What do you mean?" "Well, take Wubin. His people are very logical. They make decisions based on facts and numbers. But when he talks to you, he asks questions that have no logical answers. Like why humans keep pets or why we cry at sad movies." "That's because we're weird," Taeho said. "Or maybe it's because we're different in a way that matters," Sujin said. "Think about it. Every other species here is really good at one thing. The Scalari are logical, the Voidborn are spiritual, the Chitani are builders. But humans are average at everything," Taeho finished. "No," Sujin said firmly. "Humans are connected to everything." Before Taeho could ask what she meant, his door chimed again. This time it was Wubin. The Scalari student was tall and thin with green scales that shimmered under the lights. His eyes were large and golden. "Good evening, Taeho," Wubin said in his careful, precise way of speaking. "I wanted to discuss tomorrow's presentations." "Sure, come in," Taeho said. Sujin nodded goodbye and left them alone. Wubin looked around the messy room with interest. His people were very neat and organized. "You seem stressed," he observed. "I don't know what to present tomorrow," Taeho admitted. "Everything humans do seems simple compared to what other species can do." Wubin tilted his head. This was something he did when he was thinking hard. "That is interesting. In my studies of human culture, I have found many things that are not simple at all." "Like what?" "Friendship," Wubin said immediately. "My people understand cooperation. We work together when it is logical to do so. But humans form bonds that serve no logical purpose. You become friends with people who cannot help you. You care about people you will never see again. You even form emotional attachments to other species." Taeho frowned. "That doesn't sound special." "That sounds stupid, does it?" Wubin asked. My people have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. We have found that most intelligent life forms either compete or cooperate based on benefit. Humans do both, and they also do something else. Something we do not have a word for in our language. What's that? You care about things that do not affect you. You help creatures that cannot help you back. You save species that are not your own. You cry when fictional characters and stories are hurt. Wu Ben walked over to Teiho's bookshelf. He picked up a picture that showed Teiho with his family and their neighbor's dog. You told me once that this animal lived with your family but was not your pet. You fed it and cared for it anyway. Why? Teiho looked at the picture. Because it needed help. And because, I don't know. Because it made us happy to help. Exactly, Wu Ben said. That is not logical. That is not profitable. That is not survival behavior, but it is very human. The next morning would bring the presentations. Students from across the galaxy would show off their species' greatest achievements. Teiho still didn't know what to present about humanity. But as he fell asleep that night, he thought about what Wu Ben had said. Maybe being human wasn't about being the best at something. Maybe it was about being connected to everything. He had no idea how right he was about to be proved. Teiho woke up early the next morning. His stomach felt sick with worry. Today was presentation day, and he still had no idea what to show his classmates. He was getting dressed when his door chimed. A delivery bot waited outside with a large package. The label said it was from Earth from his sister. Finally, Teiho said. His sister had promised to send him some Korean snacks for good luck. Maybe some homemade kimchi or his favorite cookies would help him feel better. He carried the heavy box to his desk and opened it carefully. But instead of food, he found something much more surprising. A small orange cat was curled up inside, sleeping peacefully. Teiho stared at the cat in shock. This was definitely not what his sister was supposed to send. The cat opened one green eye, looked at him, and made a small meow sound. Oh no, Teiho whispered. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Pets were absolutely forbidden on Stellar Wisdom Station. The rules were very clear about this. No Earth animals were allowed because they might carry diseases that could hurt other species. Students who broke this rule were sent home immediately. The cat stretched and yawned, showing tiny white teeth. It was very small and fluffy with orange and white stripes. A collar around its neck had a tag that said Mr. Whiskers. Teiho's hands shook as he checked the shipping label again. There had been a mistake at the Interstellar Postal Service. Instead of getting package number 2847A with snacks, he had received package number 2847B. Someone on Earth was probably very confused about why they got Korean cookies instead of their neighbors. Cat Mr. Whiskers climbed out of the box and began exploring Teiho's room. The cat sniffed at his shoes, rubbed against his desk chair, and jumped onto his bed. You can't be here, Teiho told the cat. Do you understand? We're both in huge trouble. Mr. Whiskers just purred and started cleaning his paw. Teiho picked up his communicator to call Sujin, but then he stopped. If he reported this, the station authorities would take Mr. Whiskers away. They would probably put the cat in quarantine or worse, and Teiho would be sent back to Earth in disgrace. But he couldn't keep a cat hidden in his room either. Someone would find out. As if reading his thoughts, Mr. Whiskers jumped down from the bed and walked toward the door. The automatic door sensed movement and started to open. No. Teiho lunged forward and grabbed the cat just as the door slid shut again. Mr. Whiskers squirmed in his arms and made an annoyed chirping sound. You have to stay hidden, Teiho said to the cat. Just for today. After the presentations, I'll figure out how to get you back to Earth safely. He put Mr. Whiskers back in the box with some water and a piece of his breakfast. The cat did not look happy about this arrangement. Teiho hurried to his first class, but he couldn't concentrate. He kept thinking about Mr. Whiskers alone in his room. What if the cat got scared? What if it started making noise? What if someone heard? During lunch break, he rushed back to check on his unexpected guest. Mr. Whiskers had escaped from the box and was now sitting on Teiho's pillow, looking very pleased with himself. How did you get out? Teiho asked. The box looked undamaged. The cat just blinked slowly at him as if saying, I'm a cat. That's what we do. Teiho was trying to coax Mr. Whiskers back into the box when his door chimed again. He quickly threw a blanket over the cat and opened the door. Hyojun stood outside. He was a human maintenance worker who helped keep the station running. He looked worried. Hey, Teiho, Hyojun said. Have you noticed anything strange today? The biosensors in this section have been acting weird. They keep detecting an unknown life form, but we can't find anything. Teho's heart started beating very fast. Unknown life form? Yeah, something small. The computers say it's some kind of predator, but that doesn't make sense. All the students are accounted for, and we haven't had any new arrivals except for regular supply ships. Under the blanket, Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to meow loudly. What was that? Hyojun asked, stepping into the room. That was my stomach, Teho said quickly. I'm really hungry. Haven't eaten much today because I'm nervous about presentations. Hyojun looked around the room suspiciously. His eyes stopped at the blanket on the bed, which was moving slightly as Mr. Whiskers tried to get comfortable. Are you feeling okay? Hyojun asked. You look really pale. Just nervous, Teho said. You know how important today is. Hyojun nodded, but he still looked concerned. Well, if you see anything unusual, let me know immediately. Captain So Young is getting pretty worried about these sensor readings. After Hyojun left, Teho pulled the blanket off Mr. Whiskers. The cat had somehow gotten into his backpack and scattered his homework everywhere. This is a disaster, Teho said to the cat. The whole station is looking for you, and I still don't know what to present today. Mr. Whiskers jumped onto his desk and knocked over a cup of pens. Then the cat started batting at the pens as they rolled around. You're not helping, Teho said, but he couldn't help smiling a little. The cat was kind of cute, even if it was causing huge problems. An hour later, the station's alarm system started making soft warning sounds. Teho's communicator buzzed with an emergency message. All students report to designated safe areas immediately. Unknown biological entity detected on station. This is not a drill. Through his window, Teho could see security teams in the hallways. Captain So Young was leading them. She was a crystalline silicon species, which meant she looked like a walking statue made of clear blue crystal. She was beautiful but also very scary when she was angry. Attention all residents, her voice came over the station speakers. We have detected a potentially dangerous organism loose on stellar wisdom. All areas are being searched systematically. Do not approach any unknown creatures. Report any unusual activity immediately. Mr. Whiskers had somehow gotten out of the room while Teho was watching the security teams. The cat was now somewhere in the station's ventilation system, triggering sensors throughout the huge structure. Teho grabbed his backpack and ran out of his room. He had to find Mr. Whiskers before the security teams did. But first, he had to get through his presentation without anyone figuring out that he was responsible for the station's first alien invasion in 50 years. As he ran down the hallway toward the presentation hall, he could hear Captain So Young giving orders to her teams. The creature appears to be small but highly mobile. It's avoiding our search teams with unusual intelligence. We must assume it could be dangerous. If only she knew that the dangerous creature was actually a house cat who probably just wanted someone to pet him and give him some food. This was definitely not how Teho had planned to spend the most important day of his academic career. Mr. Whiskers was having the best day of his life. After spending weeks sleeping in a boring box, he was finally free to explore the most interesting place he had ever seen. The space station was full of strange smells, interesting sounds, and lots of moving things to chase. He had already discovered that the air vents were perfect for traveling around the station without being seen. The metal tunnels were just the right size for a small cat, and they led everywhere. Right now, he was watching a group of tall, thin creatures with green scales. They were gathered in a room full of shiny objects, making worried clicking sounds with their tongues. One of them held a device that beeped loudly whenever Mr. Whiskers moved. The cat found this very entertaining. He would move a little and the device would beep. The creatures would look around frantically, and Mr. Whiskers would move again. The sonic signature is getting stronger, one of the scaled creatures said. The entity is close. Dongwu, the avian Patarani who was head of the security detail, spread his large feathered wings in frustration. His people looked like giant eagles that walked on two legs, and right now his bright yellow feathers were puffed up with stress. How can something so small avoid all our sensors? He squawked. It's like it knows exactly where we're going to look. Mr. Whiskers did not understand their words, but he understood that they were playing some kind of game with him. He decided to make it more interesting. The cat dropped down from the air vent into the middle of the room. The scaled creatures froze in terror. Dongwu let out a loud shriek and jumped backward, his wings flapping wildly. Several of them reached for weapons, Mr. Whiskers looked around at all the scared faces, swished his tail once, and disappeared back into the air vent. "Did you see that?" one of the scaled creatures gasped. "It appeared and vanished like a ghost." "And those eyes," Dongwu said, his feathers still standing on end. "They were green and glowing. It was studying us." In the medical bay, Ye-Jin was having her own problems. The gaseous nebular being existed as a cloud of purple gas that floated inside a containment suit. Her job was to analyze any biological threats to the station. Her scanners had been trying to identify the unknown creature for hours, but nothing made sense. "The readings are impossible," she said to her assistant. "The organism shows signs of being both predator and prey. It has hunting instincts but also social behaviors. It's warm-blooded but also shows signs of energy conservation like cold-blooded species." "Could it be artificial?" her assistant asked. "No, it's definitely biological, but it doesn't fit any classification system we know. It's like someone took parts from different evolutionary paths and mixed them together." What Ye-Jin didn't know was that Mr. Whiskers had just walked past her door, leaving traces of his scent and fur on the sensors. Cats were indeed an unusual combination of traits that had never been seen in the galaxy before. Meanwhile, Kyung-ho, the station's AI construct, was analyzing data from hundreds of sensors throughout stellar wisdom. His mechanical brain was very good at finding patterns, but this creature made no sense. "The entity appears to be playing," he announced to the security teams. "Its movements are not random, but they also do not follow typical hunting or escape patterns." "Playing?" Captain So-Young's crystalline voice rang with disbelief. "You're saying this creature is toying with us?" "The evidence suggests recreational behavior," Kyung-ho confirmed. "It approaches populated areas, reveals itself briefly, then retreats. This is consistent with attention-seeking behavior, rather than predatory or territorial actions." Captain So-Young's crystal body glowed brighter with anger. "So we have an intelligent creature that's treating our security protocols like a game?" At that moment, Mr. Whiskers was exploring the student laboratory area. He found Jae-sung's presentation setup particularly interesting. The Chitani student had created several biomechanical symbionts, living creatures that looked like a cross between insects and machines. The symbionts were sitting quietly on a table, waiting for tomorrow's demonstration. They were about the size of hamsters, with shiny metallic shells and tiny glowing eyes. Mr. Whiskers had never seen anything like them before. He crept closer to investigate. The symbiont sensed movement and turned to look at him. For a moment, cat and biomechanical creatures stared at each other curiously. Then Mr. Whiskers did what cats do when they see small, moving objects. He pounced. The symbionts scattered in all directions, beeping and chirping in alarm. Mr. Whiskers chased after them, batting playfully at their metallic shells. To him, this was the best game ever. The symbionts had never encountered a predator before. They were designed to be helpful and cooperative, not to run from something that wanted to play with them. They began flying around the room in panic, crashing into walls and equipment. Jae-sung arrived just in time to see his carefully prepared presentation being destroyed by a small orange blur that seemed to be everywhere at once. "My symbionts." He clicked in distress. The Chitani looked like a giant praying mantis with 4 arms, and all 4 arms were waving frantically as he tried to catch his scattered creations. Mr. Whiskers paused in his game to look at this new, interesting creature. Jae-sung froze, staring back at the cat. "You're the unknown entity," Jae-sung whispered. "But you're so small and fluffy." Mr. Whiskers meowed once as if to say hello, then returned to chasing the symbionts. "Stop," Jae-sung called out. "They're not toys." But Mr. Whiskers was having too much fun to stop. He had finally found creatures that were just the right size to chase, and they made interesting noises when they flew around. The commotion attracted more security teams. Dongwu arrived with his squad just as Mr. Whiskers caught one of the symbionts and was gently batting at it with his paws. "There's the creature," Dongwu squawked. "It's attacking the student's project." "No, wait," Jae-sung said. "I don't think it's attacking. Look at its body language." Mr. Whiskers was indeed being very gentle with the symbiont. He was treating it like a toy, not prey. His tail was up, his ears were forward, and he was making small chirping sounds that seemed friendly rather than aggressive. "It's playing," Jae-sung said in amazement, just like Kyung-ho said. But the security team didn't understand cat behavior. All they saw was a strange creature that had invaded their station and was now attacking student projects. They raised their weapons, ready to capture or neutralize the threat. Mr. Whiskers sensed the change in mood. His survival instincts kicked in and he dropped the symbiont and ran toward the nearest air vent. "Don't let it escape again," Dongwu shouted. But cats are very good at escaping, especially when they're scared. Mr. Whiskers vanished into the ventilation system once more, leaving behind a room full of confused aliens and one very worried Taeho, who had just arrived to see his secret pet being hunted by station security. The presentations were supposed to start in 2 hours, and now the entire station was in lockdown because of a house cat who just wanted to play. Professor Kangdae stood at the front of the great presentation hall, his 8 tentacles waving with authority. The elderly molluscoid skin changed colors as he spoke, shifting from calm blue to worried purple. "Students," he announced in his deep, watery voice. "Despite the ongoing security situation, we will proceed with today's presentations. The Galactic Education Consortium has sent representatives from 12 worlds to observe your work. We cannot disappoint them." Taeho sat in his assigned seat sweating with nervousness. Around the circular hall, students from dozens of species waited with their presentations. Some had brought complex machines. Others had living creatures in special containers. A few had brought what looked like pieces of pure energy contained in crystal spheres. "The unknown entity has been contained to the lower levels," Professor Kangdae continued. "Security assures me it poses no immediate threat to this gathering." If only he knew, Taeho thought miserably. Through the air vents above, he could occasionally hear soft scratching sounds. Mr. Whiskers was still exploring the station, probably looking for more interesting things to play with. "We will begin with Wu Bin of the Scolari Republic," Professor Kangdae announced. Wu Bin glided forward with perfect posture. His green scales caught the light as he placed a small crystal pyramid on the presentation table. The crystal began to glow with inner light. "Honored observers," Wu Bin said in his precise way of speaking, "I present the memory archive of Scolari Prime. This single crystal contains the complete knowledge and experiences of 10 billion individuals across 5,000 years of our civilization." The crystal projected a hologram into the air above it. Images of vast cities, mathematical equations, and scientific discoveries flowed past like a river of light. "Any being who touches this crystal can access all of this knowledge instantly," Wu Bin explained. "Our entire species' learning becomes available to them." The observers made impressed noises. Several took notes on their various recording devices. Taeho slumped in his seat. How could humans compete with that? Wu Bin's people could share all their knowledge instantly. Humans still had to read books and attend schools for years to learn anything. "Thank you, Wu Bin," Professor Kangdae said. "Next we will hear from Mireille of the Voidborn Collective." Mireille floated forward. Her species looked like beings made of starlight, beautiful, glowing, and slightly transparent. She carried what looked like an empty picture frame. "Observers," she said, her voice like wind chimes, "I present quantum canvas art. This piece exists simultaneously across 17 different dimensions." She activated the frame, and suddenly everyone in the room could see something impossible. The empty space inside the frame showed different scenes depending on where you looked from. From one angle, it was a sunset. From another, it was an ocean storm. From a third, it was the birth of a star. Beings across the galaxy can view this artwork at the same time from their own worlds, Mireille explained. It connects viewers across space and time through quantum entanglement. Even more impressed sounds came from the observers. One of them, a crystalline being from the inner worlds, actually applauded. Taeho felt even worse. Mireille's people could create art that existed in multiple realities at once. Human art was just paint on canvas or sounds in the air. "Excellent work," Professor Kangdae said. "Now let us hear from Jae-sung of the Chitani Hive." Jae-sung clicked forward on his 6 legs, carrying a container full of his biomechanical symbionts. The small creatures had recovered from their encounter with Mr. Whiskers and were now behaving properly. "Honored ones," Jae-sung clicked. "I present living tools. These symbionts are part biological, part technological. They can solve problems, repair equipment, and even modify themselves to meet new challenges." He released the symbionts onto the table. Immediately, they began working together to build a complex structure from spare parts that had been scattered nearby. They communicated with tiny beeps and clicks, coordinating their efforts perfectly. They are not just tools, Jae-sung explained. They are partners. They learn from each experience and become more helpful over time. The observers were fascinated. The symbionts had just built a working model of a fusion reactor using nothing but random pieces of metal and plastic. Tae-ho wanted to disappear. Jae-sung's people had created living creatures that could think and build things. Humans couldn't even create artificial intelligence that worked properly most of the time. Other students presented equally amazing things. The ethereal plasma beings showed how they could exist as pure energy. The crystalline resonators demonstrated music that could restructure matter at the molecular level. The quantum mechanics presented a device that could slow down time itself. Each presentation made Tae-ho feel smaller and more insignificant. Finally, Professor Kang Dae called his name. Tae-ho of Earth, please present your species contribution. Tae-ho stood up on shaking legs. He walked to the front of the hall with nothing in his hands. Every eye sensor and detection organ in the room focused on him. Honored observers, he began, his voice cracking with nervousness. I wanted to talk about human literature. We tell stories about things that never really happened. We write them down in books and people read them for entertainment. The silence in the room was deafening. Several observers looked confused. Stories that weren't real? What was the point of that? And we paint pictures of things we see, not quantum pictures or dimensional art, just regular pictures on canvas, with paint. One of the observers made a note that probably said primitive species. Tae-ho's face was red with embarrassment. We also make music by hitting things and blowing air through tubes. It doesn't restructure matter or exist in multiple dimensions. It just sounds nice. He was about to apologize and sit back down when something small and orange dropped from the air vent directly above the presentation table. Mr. Whiskers landed gracefully on all four paws, looked around at the room full of aliens, and began washing his face with his paw as if this was the most normal thing in the world. The entire hall erupted in chaos. The entity, someone shouted, "Security!" Professor Kang Dae's tentacles turned bright red with alarm. Several observers jumped from their seats. Others activated personal shields. A few began making what sounded like prayers in their native languages, but Mr. Whiskers ignored all the commotion. He had spotted Tae-ho standing nervously at the front of the room, and cats always know when their humans need comfort. The small orange cat walked calmly across the stage, completely unbothered by the audience of terrified aliens. He reached Tae-ho, rubbed against his leg, and began purring loudly. The sound of purring echoed through the suddenly silent hall. It was a sound that no one in the galaxy had ever heard before. A soft, rhythmic vibration that somehow managed to be both soothing and mysterious. Tae-ho looked down at Mr. Whiskers, then up at the room full of staring aliens. His academic career was definitely over. His life on the station was finished. He would be sent back to Earth in disgrace. But as he knelt down to pet the cat, something strange happened. Mr. Whiskers' purring seemed to affect everyone in the room in ways no one expected, and that was when Tae-ho finally understood what his real presentation was supposed to be about. The purring filled the great hall like a gentle song. At first, the aliens didn't understand what they were hearing. The sound was completely new to them, a soft, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the small creature sitting calmly next to Tae-ho. Then something remarkable began to happen. Woo-bin, who had been standing rigid with alarm, slowly relaxed his perfect posture. His large golden eyes, usually sharp and calculating, became soft and curious. For the first time in his adult life, the logical Scolari found himself wanting to understand something that made no practical sense. "What is that sound?" he whispered, moving closer to the stage. "And why does it make me feel peaceful?" Mireille's starlight form flickered with colors that had never appeared in Voidborn art before. Warm oranges and gentle yellows instead of her people's usual cool blues and silvers. "The creature's bioelectric field," she said in wonder. "It's creating harmony patterns I've never seen. It's like it's singing to our souls." Professor Kang Dae's tentacles had stopped their alarmed waving, and now swayed gently with the rhythm of Mr. Whiskers' purring. The ancient molluscoid had studied thousands of species, but he had never encountered anything like this. "Fascinating," he murmured, his skin shifting to the deep green of profound curiosity. "The creature appears to be producing this sound as a social behavior, not a defensive one. Even Jae-sung's symbionts were affected. The tiny biomechanical creatures had stopped their efficient movements and were now swaying slightly, their usual precise coordination replaced by something more relaxed. Captain So Young entered the hall with her security team, ready to capture the dangerous invader. But when she saw the scene before her, she stopped in surprise. The dangerous creature was sitting peacefully while an entire hall of aliens stared at it in fascination rather than fear. "Stand down," she told her team quietly. "This creature is not behaving aggressively." Dr. Yun Seo arrived at that moment, having traveled from Earth as quickly as possible when she heard about the biological incident involving a human student. She was a xenobiologist who specialized in human-alien interactions, and she took one look at the situation and began to smile. "Oh my," she said softly. "A house cat. You know what this creature is?" Professor Kang Dai asked immediately. "Indeed I do," Dr. Yun Seo said, walking calmly toward the stage. Mr. Whiskers looked up at her approach, meowed once in greeting and returned to his purring. "This is a domestic cat, or feline," she explained to the fascinated audience. "They are one of humanity's oldest companions. For over 10,000 years, humans and cats have lived together." "Lived together?" Wu Bin asked, his voice full of confusion. "But what function does it serve? What work does it perform?" Dr. Yun Seo knelt down and gently stroked Mr. Whiskers behind the ears. The cat's purring grew louder and more content. "That's the remarkable thing," she said. "Cats serve no specific function for humans. They are not food sources. They cannot carry heavy loads or protect property effectively. They do not help with complex calculations or provide technological assistance." The aliens looked even more confused. "Then why do humans keep them?" Mireille asked. "Because they make us happy," Taeho said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "We keep cats because we enjoy their company. Because they're soft and warm and make interesting sounds. Because when we're sad or lonely, they sit with us and purr." "But that serves no logical purpose," Jae-sung clicked in bewilderment. "No," Dr. Yeon-seo agreed, standing up with a smile. "It doesn't. And that's what makes humans unique in the galaxy." She turned to address the entire hall. "Every species here today has shown us their greatest technological or artistic achievements. Magnificent works that demonstrate intelligence, creativity, and power. But humanity's greatest achievement isn't a technology or an art form." "What is it then?" Professor Kang Dai asked. "The ability to form emotional bonds with creatures completely different from themselves," Dr. Yun Seo explained. "Humans share their world not just with cats but with dogs, birds, fish, reptiles, and hundreds of other species. Not for any practical benefit but simply because they care about these creatures." Ambassador Jin Woo entered the hall at that moment, having rushed from the diplomatic sector when he heard about the situation. He was a distinguished human official who had been working with alien governments for decades. "Dr. Yun Seo is correct," he said, addressing the assembled observers. "What you've witnessed today is the most important thing about humanity. While other species perfected individual abilities, humans learned to live with others." "But how is that useful?" one of the crystalline observers asked. "What practical application does emotional attachment have?" Ambassador Jin Woo smiled. "Every species in this galaxy has faced the same problem. How to work with beings who are different from you. Most solve this through logic, trade agreements, or careful treaties. These work, but they're fragile. They break down when conditions change. And humans?" Professor Kang Dae asked. "Humans form emotional connections that transcend logic," Ambassador Jin Woo explained. "They care about the well-being of creatures who cannot help them. They make friends with beings who have nothing to offer them. They even risk their lives to save species they've never met before." He gestured toward Mr. Whiskers, who was now lying on his back while Taeho rubbed his belly. "This small creature cannot speak human language. It cannot solve mathematical problems or create art or build tools. By any practical measure, it contributes nothing to human society. Yet humans across their world keep millions of cats in their homes and care for them their entire lives. That's..." Wu Bin paused, searching for words. "That's completely illogical." "Yes," Ambassador Jin Woo agreed. "And it's also completely wonderful. Because the same instinct that makes humans care for cats also makes them care about alien species they've just met. It makes them want to understand you, to be friends with you, to help you even when there's no benefit to themselves." The hall was quiet, except for Mr. Whiskers' contented purring. The Galactic Union invited humanity to join, not because of your technology, Ambassador Jinwoo continued, but because of your unique ability to form bridges between different forms of life. In a galaxy full of diverse species, that skill is more valuable than any machine or artwork. Myray's form brightened with understanding. The creature's presence, it made us all feel connected, even though we're different species with different needs and ways of thinking. Exactly, Dr. Yunseo said. Humans have spent thousands of years learning to read the emotional needs of other species. They can tell when a cat is happy, sad, scared, or playful. They've learned to communicate across species barriers in ways no other civilization has mastered. Taeho looked up from where he was playing with Mr. Whiskers. So, the fact that humans like pets isn't embarrassing? Embarrassing? Professor Kangday's tentacles rippled with what might have been laughter. Young human, what we've witnessed today is the most remarkable presentation in the Academy's history. I didn't even have a real presentation prepared, Taeho admitted. You presented something far more important than technology or art, the professor said. You presented the essence of what makes humanity special, the ability to form bonds of affection across species boundaries. Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to roll over and playfully bat at Taeho's hand. The simple gesture made several observers sigh with something that might have been longing. Could we learn to do this too? Wu Bin asked hesitantly. This emotional bonding across species? Perhaps, Dr. Yunseo said, but it would require you to do something very difficult, to care about something for no logical reason at all. Over the following weeks, Mr. Whiskers became the unofficial mascot of Stellar Wisdom Station. After extensive medical clearance, he was allowed to stay as part of an ongoing cultural exchange program. The small orange cat could often be found in the student common areas, purring contentedly while beings from across the galaxy took turns petting him and marveling at the strange, wonderful sensation of caring for something that served no practical purpose whatsoever. And Taeho finally understood what Sujin had meant when she said humans were connected to everything. It wasn't about being the best or the smartest or the most advanced, it was about being the ones who cared. As he sat in his room one evening, writing a letter to his sister to thank her for the best mistake ever, Mr. Whiskers curled up in his lap and purred softly. Outside the window, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was slowly learning that the most powerful technology of all might just be the ability to love something small and fluffy for no reason, except that it made you happy.